There
There
you
we go.
are. Hi, beautiful.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, and
Thank
you?
you. Good.
Welcome to the Liftoneself podcast, Holly. I'm so thankful you're here with me.
Thank you, Nat. I love it. I love it. We're going to have a great conversation. I already know.
Yeah. Let's take a breath together. Breathe in through your nose and slowly exhale. How's your heart doing?
My heart today was weak last night, actually, very weak this morning, but I've done some exercises throughout the day to strengthen it. So right now, it's leaning towards being better, but I'm a little disheartened by humanity today.
Mm-hmm. What can you thank COVID for?
What can I thank COVID for? I can thank COVID for awakening those predominantly around discovering that their life wasn't what they really wanted it to be. Their job wasn't what was really fulfilling them. They were running around this life, which is more of a rat race, and not realizing that they were on autopilot and in high gear and revving up and thought that was normal until COVID slowed everybody down.
Yeah, really did a slow down. I appreciate the slowdown though, because you get to see things more in detail. Can you explain to the listeners what you provide for service?
So I have a background education in philosophy and psychology. My main portal is I'm a master astrologer. I've done this for a long time, and the language comes very clear to me. Through that, I get messages from source, or from intuition, empathy, and also remote viewing. And when you have a session with me, you can tell, I can tell, and I share with my clients what the differences are. And I coach my clients on a regular basis to navigate them through opportunistic times, which I can clearly see, as some may call predictions. And there's a timeline in those predictions where there's an opportunity to either let go of a limiting belief or a block that is holding someone back from what they aspire to be or have and enjoy, and also opportunistic times for advancement and gaining opportunities in business or career or love life, or working with their relationships or their children or their health, for instance. And the coaching, I use all of those modalities: the psychology, neurolinguistic programming, past life regression. I'm certified as. That's important to me as well. I do a lot of them. And it helps. People are seen and they're heard. The first 10 minutes of a session with me, I talk only about that person, their entire childhood. And if they're a believer of past lives, I'll talk about that as well, including their relationship with their parents and their siblings and their relationships or partners, their career, their job. What's the best career and job suited for their specific karmic soul and personality? And then they feel heard and they feel seen, and even recognizing parts of themselves that they'd long forgotten were there. And I help them rediscover that within themselves.
And what led you into this?
Well, I was raised with a mother who was psychic and did tarot cards and tea leaf reading. And she was a party trick at all of their hippie parties. My parents are kind of hippie children and young. I had young parents. And I grew up in the Catholic Church, which I was very much for until my late teens, and started learning more of the history of Catholicism and became dismayed with that. And I was told when I was 13 from a friend of the family that was psychic that I was psychic too. And I didn't see it. I was too scientific. I actually wanted to be a biologist growing up. And not that I did that, but that's what or a psychologist. I was interested in both. And in my early 20s, I was telling a friend this story, and he was a very stoic Englishman. So I was very surprised that he came the next day back to work and gave me this book, The Only Way to Learn Astrology, uh, the first edition, which is still in effect. It's the best book to learn astrology. This was, I'm going to age myself, this was just at the dawning of computers. So I didn't have a computer, and I had to do the mathematical equation, which is about a 2.5 page long division to learn to map out the sky, which is a mathematical equation that was designed by Kepler in the mid 1950s, who's an astronomer. And I literally, I'm not a book reader, I'm not a bookworm, and I couldn't put the book down. Within a week, I had it mastered, the language of it. And it's very symbolic. Everything are symbols and numbers and angles and math of every single planet, some stars in the sky and the moon. And then I started practicing on myself and then practicing on people, and mostly about their personality traits, about who they were and what they were all about and what was the inner workings kind of thing, which really fascinated to me. I always wondered what motivated people to do what they do different from someone else. And yeah, and that's what got me started. And that was in my early 20s. It really didn't become a business until my early 40s.
Okay. Why?
That's when I quit sort of a corporate America job that I took on when I was a single mom and struggled through that. I was using astrology all along. I used it to understand the marriages that I was in and the marriage that I was in currently. I used it to understand my child when she was born. I knew right away. I was looking up her chart like minutes before she was born. And then when I quit that job, I wasn't going back. I was taking time off, and I just started try to make a living off of doing that. And then, as you know, Dr. Shafali, who endorsed me a few years ago, who I had met a few years prior to that, before she had become an Oprah sensation, and I predicted that as well for her, to her, she endorsed me. So in that endorsement, I got a huge audience. And that allowed me to this day, continue to coach and use my astrology. My astrology grew, and my psychic ability grew immensely because I was doing it. I was practicing it every day. So it just got stronger and stronger and stronger. And actually the remote viewing I only recognized that about a year ago. So who knows what else I've got underneath this hat that the universe is going to give me.
Did you find that once you got into your 40s to really delve into this and make it
Yeah.
your way of being and embodying it, that it required the confidence and trusting yourself?
Yeah. In fact, I would flip that around. The more that I did readings, the more confidence and trust I had, because at first I was apprehensive of saying certain things like, oh, this is off the wall, or this doesn't make sense. And sometimes I do see people that are passed on. It's very, very rare. It's like 30%, but when I get it, it's like bang on. So sometimes I'm hesitant to share things with people because, again, what if it's not accurate? But what has happened is I've become more courageous and brave, and I just put it out there. If I get a message, I just put it out there, and more is it's accurate. As an example, just recently, we had a painter in our house, and in the midst of his work, we got to know him really well, talking to him quite a bit. He's a very personable fellow. His wife was suddenly diagnosed with cancer and rushed to the hospital right in the middle of all of this. And he's trying to finish the work. Well, he can't even visit her in the hospital because of everything going on right now. And we're talking about it. And I just threw it out. He already knew what I did, and he was asking me questions. And I threw it out there and I said, did your wife lose a child? And he almost fell. And he goes, yeah. And I said, this is not about the child, though. This is a whole family dynamic that happened around that child. That is where the pain is coming from. And it's all in that ovary section, which I don't see cancer in. And then the stomach area. Well, long story short, he wanted her to talk to me to give her some peace because she was obviously freaking out. Everything was happening so quickly. She just had surgery yesterday. There was no cancer in the whole ovary area. And the story was that her family, very strict religion, cut her off for 5 years because of her choice to give up a child, that, abortion.
Mhm.
And it was a huge dynamic within them. And when I get messages like this, I was really hesitant to tell them. I'm like, I don't know this person. But I did, I was pushed. I'm like, why would I? So I just said, did your wife lose a child? Very simple. And then I got all the story after. And then the whole healing process around it as well, which is what she has to do in order to help her heal through what she's going through right now. And why do I know these things? I don't give myself credit for it. That could be a remote viewing because this is something that had already happened. And it's in his mind, they haven't even thought about it. In fact, she said she hadn't even thought about it until recently, like literally 3 days before I said anything, because that surgeon said, you have scar tissue. Did you have an abortion? Did you give up a child? And she said, we hadn't talked about it in like 10 years. And then the doctor and then me, all in 1 week after 10 years. So she took it very seriously. Yeah, I think I have a lot of resentment I need to heal around that right now. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said anything. I would have thought, Holly, that's just, you're making this up in your head. Right now, I just say it.
Thank you for that, because I also too see at times where I'll have a message and I know that it's going to spark some sadness into somebody or some overwhelmment because it is a loved one that has transitioned that's coming to give a message. And those ones I get really apprehensive with, yet it's like you're interfering in the messaging that is required. You cannot attach a personal story onto it. It's for them to whatever they're going to do with that information. They go through their stuff, and it just gives me again the reflection back of trusting myself and trusting the guidance and trusting that it's not always for me to know. I'm just the messenger, and just give it as simple and as clear as it is. Can you share with us your predictions for 2022?
I wrote a book, 101 Answers from the Universe, you can get on Amazon. And a lot of what's happening was spoken of during that channeled book, of all of the things that need to be changed. And I will get to 2022, but I want to segue first of what's happening between now, or actually in the last year, all the way till 2025. So 2025 is our choice point, our turning point as globally, as a society, as humanity, in the changes that we need to make in order for the planet to survive that we're living on. In all, it's common sense, actually, but I think it still shocks people when they hear this, that the earth will do quite fine without us. We're the problem. But whatever we do will reflect the health of the atmosphere and the health of the earth. And, climate change is only a part of it. And this affects our living conditions and how we're going to survive, air quality and food quality, and how we're going to survive normal illnesses and normal problems that even the earth surviving things that would normally be a fire that would happen every year or 3 times a year, such as in Australia and California, British Columbia, that are now out of control because of what we've done to the earth. It can't stop it like it normally could. We're drying it up of its resources, basically. So all of these things, the educational system, the pharmaceutical system, the medical system, the agricultural system, AKA consumerism, all has to drastically change, or it will be out of control. And I don't care how much money you have, you're not going to be able to get the control back after 2025. So 2022 is extremely important because that's literally between 2022 and 2025 is just that 3 years to change things up. So 2022, we've got The planet of Jupiter is the one that's hovering around and changing from Aquarius and Pisces. Sorry, Aries, Aries and Pisces. And why that's important, we're going to see a shift right at the end of this year, actually, and when it moves into Pisces, and then it reverts back. And what I mean in May of 2022. So globally, what I'm seeing with Jupiter is always a wonderful, beautiful planet. No, it can never be bad. No matter if there's a square, an opposition, bad angles, bad aspects, Jupiter is always about expansion. It's the largest planet in our galaxy. It's surrounded by gas. And then there's one little storm area that's out of control on Jupiter. So what that represents is that storm, that little storm that's going on in you, that's being activated by what's happening in your environment or globally, is going to create growth and expansion. And with Aries is, which has been in a bit, it's been in Aquarius. So, and Pisces. So Aries and Pisces is about the warrior, and Pisces about the peace, right? So this is the peaceful warrior that has to come out globally. So you're going to see a divide. The division will continue. So if people are hoping for the division to stop, that's, everybody's going to pick one side or the other. That's not going to happen. And I have been told by source that even though I had a hard time understanding it at first, that both sides are 100% right. Both sides are 100% correct. Whether this is a political divide, which is more prevalent in the United States, with also the divide of the healthcare system, or it's just your choices of wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, all these other things that are going on, then, but they're both right. And the reason they say they're both right, because I was like, how can, there's got to be a right way and a wrong way. They're both right because they both need to be heard, right? They both need to have a voice in order for this divide, which is a pendulum from one end to another, to come to this equilibrium of let's make a connection of these divides so that we're both live in harmony, right, with the two divides, and create a whole new sort of way of living, whatever that might be. So they have to argue with each other. They have to fight with each other. Everything has to come to the forefront where all the problems are deep inside what people aren't looking at. And because if there was no arguing about it, if there was no war around it, then nobody would be paying attention to it, right? If there's no drama around it, nobody would be paying attention. So when it moves back and forth from Pisces to Aries throughout the year, this expansion will be about people fighting for peace. What happens is, and I had just said this to a client of mine who was asking me, when is this? She's a doctor, but as an astrologer, she was asking me, when is this virus thing, when is it going to be over? And I said, when the virus between humans is over. It's nothing to do with the virus itself. It's when people are so sick and tired of fighting with each other and hurting each other and harming each other. And when they are so tired of that they wave their white flags of humanity and go, whatever this is, which is very real, whatever this is, we are bringing each other down. We are becoming more dangerous than the virus itself. And that's what's going to happen throughout 2022, is that side of us that wants peace and harmony and humanity and love and unconditional love and healing on a medical level, as well as a humanity and a spiritual level, because it all coincides. And then also we have to fight for that. We have to fight for the powers that be to listen to us as a collective. And there may be, I see two divides of collective. So they're both going to have to be taken care of. then I see it being split into 4, and then I see it being split into 8, just like a cell, right? And that's going to happen throughout 2025. So in May, when it goes back into, when it goes back into, it's in Pisces, right at the beginning of this year, all the way into May. So until May, we're going to feel this isolation. We're going to feel invisible. Many of us, we're going to feel there's going to be a lot of loneliness coming in and around this. And we're going to feel suppressed and victimized. And in May is when collectively people will be tired of it. And then that's when the fighters come out, and that's when the warriors, and I know there's a lot of protesting and activism happening right now, but in May, it's going to be so huge. It's going to be hard to avoid. And my prediction is around the people that are in for instance, people that are in the workforce, let's say people that are, in the workforce, and their life on a daily basis, working is becoming more difficult because of all of the restrictions and the constraints and the rules and the dialogue, that they're the ones that are going to say, I don't know what you guys have to do, but I'm about to quit my job because I can't handle this constant mayhem. And I've done everything that's right. I got double jabbed. I'm wearing my mask. I'm doing all the protocol, and my life is getting more and more difficult, or vice versa, right? And that's when they say we need a stronger workforce type of thing. So this is what I'm seeing in that way. I'm also seeing the mothers coming forward as well, in wanting to change the school system. And I'm not talking about just the coronavirus at this point. A lot of the kids were off school for a year in many parts of the world, many parts of the westernized world. And a lot of these kids are eager to get back, which is great. 1/3 are eager to go back. 1/3 are in between. They didn't like being home, but they don't want to go back to what was either. And then a lot of them, which are a lot of my clients, I've seen this in all of my clients, a lot of them, the kids are like, I don't want to go back ever. I like being alone. I work better on my own. But the mothers are like, I'm not a homeschool mom. That's not me. What's the solution? And they're going to be begging for some kind of a solution in the school system. I'm really happy that have you heard of this, school pods?
Yeah.
Right. That's becoming very popular. You can look up schoolpod.com, I think it is. And I predicted this about a year ago, that people would get together and have 30, 40, 50 kids, find a place and homeschool them. But what I predicted was that the parents would rotate around. So like you might do it with 5 parents, and you'd have them one day, and they'd have them one day, and they'd have them one day, and homeschool them that way. But I think that the pod schooling is getting even larger than that, to about 50 kids or more. Not a private school, still homeschooling. So this is more and more of what I see will be happening. And that's thanks to COVID, really. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful for that. The educational system, in my opinion, sucks.
Very archaic.
Horrible system.
When teenagers still have to ask permission to go use the bathroom, I'm like, where's autonomy? Those parents that had to work and had kids, I don't know how they did it. I really don't. I have no idea. I'm like, my heart goes out to them, and superheroes, like seriously superheroes, because
and there are people that need to get out of the house. There are a lot of women that are not stay-at-home moms, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'll work with my clients, and I'll look at them and go, you're not a stay-at-home mom. You need to be out and about, kibitzing around. But that if your only choice is to go to a 9-to-5 office job, then staying at home, they're not happy there either. right? But it's getting them out of the house, and they can't wait to get out of the job and go back. So if you worked from home, you could do 8 hours in 6 hours or 5 hours or 4 days a week. You could do the same amount of work. You're not driving there, you're not driving back, etc. Then now you've got time to spend some time with your kids, or bring them to the local community center and they can all spend time with other kids and create more of a community at home in your home front. Because what happens if this 5 years down the line, everybody's still working from home, they're going to start going, okay, I'm bored. I got to create some kind of community. Geez, I haven't met my neighbor down the street or that neighbor. Maybe we should start connecting together, because my social life is not at my workplace anymore, which is very exclusive, because that's all. I mean, you do work 8 hours a day with them, but they're not your, that's not a connection. You're connecting if you're building things together and problem solving together to a point, hence why there's a lot of romance in the office, right? Because this does spark up all those chemicals when you're working closely with people like that. However, if and when, and that's my prediction as well for the next 3 years, that we are forced to take a look at how can I get my personal needs met, that such as self-confidence and certain desires met in my community rather than in the workplace.
I think with COVID, it allowed people to start to say hi to their neighbors, because a lot of people were walking now. So a lot of people were seeing each other and finally saying hi and who are you, and seeing the dog and seeing the kids. So it brought a sense of community back, where everybody was kind of stuck in their treadmill of get in the car, go to work, drop the kids off here, don't have time to even go for a walk or see your neighbors. Whereas COVID, it was like, okay, well, our mental well-being, let's go for walks. And then it started opening up of seeing your neighbors, speaking to people, saying hello, which was, I think it was a beautiful gift that we were given for that, if people really engaged with that. Because I do believe like the only way that we will get back into healing is through community, is through the villages. It's through connection, because we're not to do it alone at all. We need human connection.
We're not built to actually be in huge, super huge, large communities either.
Yeah.
We're more on smaller communities. Even in the 1800s, 1700s, where there was churches, and each community would kind of, if you watch the movie Chocolate or Chocolat, because it's French, right? It will teach you what their community was. And it was built around a church. And everybody abided to what the church said to do and when to do it and how to do it and when to close up shop and what to do on Sundays and Saturdays and everything. And then this woman comes in, creates a chocolatier business, and she doesn't want to go with all of the stuff and it made other people go, well, she doesn't have to do it. I don't have to do it. And it changed but it created a brand new community in the end, right? Of it. And it's metaphorical of what happens in society in general. And we're such a large global, with the internet and everything, community, that now these keyboard warriors are affecting my life. And if it wasn't for the internet, I would not have ever met them or had any relationship with them, right? And this is affecting the mental health of a lot of people as well, too. So in May of 2022, I see people advocating for that as well. Most of it, I see it as is more about activism. So I think it's going to be pretty out of control, because you're just going to have activists coming from all different directions. And then people will be arguing, well, mine's more important than yours. It is globally, Aries is the first house. So it will be very self-serving at first. And what is my desire? When Pisces comes back around, when it goes retrograde, that was Aries in May. When Pisces comes back around, when it goes retrograde in the end of October into the fall, then we're going to get back into that collective submissiveness again. And it's funny how astrologically this is lining up with the seasons and sort of the flu season as well too. Now, at least in Canada, there's this, people are thinking we might be locked down for the winter when flu season starts to come again. Then May comes, now we're into the spring astrologically, there's a shift there. And then back in October, there's a shift astrologically as well. So I think we need this one last submission, this one last place of victimhood into the new year of 2023 for us to come back even stronger and go, no, enough is enough. This time we've got to make it permanent. Whatever your plight is, everyone's will be different, and everyone's is necessary. Every single one is necessary. I want to take this opportunity, because we were talking about it, I want to steal this opportunity to thank all of the volunteers. And I look at this as volunteers that were born into becoming these young adults, these teenagers that had mental health issues that was very prevalent and mainstream before COVID happened. And we were taking care of these children with mental health issues because they're the ones that founded the school systems that I see will become the mainstream school system by 2025. And I experienced it firsthand, taking care of a family member for a few months and helping her find the school system. Now, I was talking to a client last week, and what I find very sad is I'd said to this client, and even with my relative, is that they have to be diagnosed with a mental health issue from a doctor in order to get the accommodations in the school system that everyone should have. You should not, they don't have mental health issues. Some do, don't get me wrong, but some of them, it's just, that's their personality. They don't have ADD. They're just a multifaceted, focused person who cannot focus on one thing because their curious mind wants to jump the branches to branches to branches like a monkey does. Right? They want to take things apart, put them back together. They're usually got the mind of an engineer. And the school system that I had my relative go into has always been here. I didn't know it existed. 50 kids in the entire school, 5 teachers, and they were all high school students. They fed them breakfast, they fed them lunch, they fed them dinner. They got one day off a week of their choice. They got a Friday afternoon off of their choice. They gave them their semester's work. These are the books you've got to read, the choices of books that you read. These are the projects that you have. Have at it. The teachers were only there if they had questions. They chose in that 4 months of semester how fast they learn and when they finish the projects and when they turn them in. No rules, no regulations, all self-regulated, all self-managed. And if at the end of the year they didn't, they carried it over to the next year and they had to do it. And in most cases, they graduated early, not later. And my particular family member did not graduate on time. She chose to take a lot of time off, but that was the autonomy, right? And I was watching this going, this should be the normal school system. This is not the way it should be. So this is what I see is happening too. Moms, mothers, women, the wise women are going to rise above and they're going to say, this is the future of our children. Enough is enough.
I'm going to be curious. Do you have a message for me?
Let me sit with that one. Now we can do this 2 ways. I can get a message from source, or we can do both ways. I can get a message from source, and I can also look you up astrologically as well.
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Let me look you up. Ooh. Okay, I'm liking this one. All right. So number 1, you are going and you're at the tail end of what's called a soul ascension. So a soul, there's soul rebirths and soul ascensions, and I've coined those myself. And a soul ascension, and then next year you'll be entering into what's called the magic wand phase. So you're going to finally start a business of, you got the mind of a social worker, of a psychologist, and you're very good at coaching, actually, and you got strong leadership capabilities, very strong leadership capabilities. So I think what's been holding you back, and you're coming into a realization of this since last May, and that will be final in, and your realization has come through frustration and lies and some deception as well. So you're going to fully uncover the truth in May 2022. And it may be involving if one of your children has some issues that has to be addressed within the medical system and also within the educational system. And you've taken complete control over this. You haven't allowed them to steer. You did allow them to steer, but not up till last May. You started to take the wheel. And so through sheer frustration, which you're going to hit in January and February, and I want you to know that that's the last straw. That's the last gateway. There'll be no more frustration after that. And then you're going to take the leadership skills around making sure that not only are you advocating for that situation, but you're advocating for a lot of, looks like parents, or at least other people that are in autonomous positions. You're going to be advocating for them because you're an activist as well. But you're also you're usually a behind the scenes person. So this is not comfortable for you to do. But I see you bringing together the people that will be at the forefront for you so that you don't have to be the one in the forefront of it all. Now, this does have to do with the healthcare system because it's in the 6th house. It also does have to do with a child, one of your children that's very dynamic, very dramatic. And you can be drama too. Like, this is interesting because you can stay very much in control. You're very good at staying much in control. Not a lot of people can push you over the edge. But once you're once you've reached that pinnacle of you've just stepped on my last nerve, you're like in their face. Now, maybe not personally, but in a leadership position, you are. And yet it's still very controlled. This is what's neat because you're gathering up the ammo, waiting for you to have a position to go, okay, let the dogs out. You have no idea what I'm about to throw at you. And this is going to happen for you in January and February. Does that resonate with you so far?
Yep, it does. It
Yeah,
does.
you're smirking. So just so the people can't see. She's smiling and nodding her head.
I'm just not looking forward to that last frustration. I'm like, oh shit, universe, thanks a lot. Yet I understand that whenever there's a birth of something, there's challenges. So I just have to remember that I have the capacity to go through it.
Oh, well, when your soul rebirth comes, soul ascension comes. Now, what a soul ascension is, I heard you ask. And this is in April, and this is a 2.5-year cycle. So what's really neat about soul ascensions is that you're graduating and you've come to the place in your life where you're about to launch your mission, your destiny, what you're here to do. And it's scary for you because if you take a deeper look, this is representing a significant challenge that you had as a child yourself. And the fear, even though this is not the same, the fear of what the repercussions could be is very similar. And that is that, and the ego, you got to be really careful. Your moon's in Leo. It's a good placement for leadership. You got to be careful that the ego doesn't get meshed in to all of this, and specifically other people's egos that are triggering yours. But it does involve a childhood situation, which you managed by controlling your emotions and controlling your fear. And now that's coming back up to the surface. So what you're advocating for, if it's involving your children, is what wasn't advocated for you when you were younger. And so you're doing this for little Nat and your own child as well. And so that's the part that is gut-wrenching for you. However, in April of 2022, everything magical, I call this a magic wand because everything that you want to happen is just going to happen. anything that you advocate for, what you fight for after February, all of that hardship is over. You're making people see things they don't want to see. And you're trying to avoid the fear factor. You're trying to avoid that. But I don't think you'll be able to. And then when April comes, people are going to come out of the woodworks. April, May, people are going to come out of the woodworks. It's going to back you up. They're going to be your army, basically. And there's going to be great success in the next 2 years. You're an ambassador of change. And a lot of it does have to do with the healing of the mind, mental health, fear, persuasion, manipulation. And this is one of your pet peeves, is that not so much of the people that are the manipulators. Your pet peeve is the people that are manipulated. Because you're like, you guys are following them, so that makes them strong, right? They're not going to go away if you keep following them. So this is what you're advocating for. And starting in April, you're gonna start winning that battle finally, because looks like it's been specifically since the spring, it's been in high gear, and you've been angry, really angry.
Those that have been told, given these diagnoses, been told that be medicated, been told all these kind of things, where it's like they were never justified of, can you listen to my own story? And as I'm telling this, my nervous system is just running rampant of cold chills all the way, like all through down my legs and everything. So it's like, I know I'm speaking in truth, and I thank you for the message of making sense, because
you're the healer of the mind, and specifically working with people that suppress due to fear. But also, you can't work with people if you're going to do coaching, because I said earlier, you got the mind of a psychotherapist and the coach. You see what other people don't see. You see what they're afraid of, what their dark sides are, vulnerabilities that people do not want to address in their own personal lives. And because you've got that Mars and Aries, that advocate, fighter, warrior side, you do not, and you should not, work with anyone unless they're ready to pull up their bootstraps and put on their gloves and fight a good fight and be vulnerable. If they can't do that, you're not a babysitter of somebody's emotional attachment to their old story. That you'll find that frustrating, exhausting, and you don't feel like you can really help them if they're not willing to be vulnerable and to face their fears. So if you do go into the coaching arena, for instance, or you're working with parents, which is what you would do really well with as well, to help parents advocate for their own children's health, or their own children's mental state, or their own children's diagnosis, or to help them advocate that for themselves, then you'll have to, what I would suggest, and I've suggested this to other clients, is that your intake form for your clients has to clearly say that you're willing to do the work this way, because you have the ability to get people from A to B very fast if they're willing to do the work. And in fact, that's your skill set. You don't have the patience for, I only want to hear your story once, and I never need to hear it again. We're going to move past that story, right? Because most of the time, parents that are dealing with their children's mental health, ADD, ADHD, whatever, and all these other kabillion other diagnoses that are out there, is because that parent has parts of that within themselves as well that was never addressed, right? And submerged. So that comes out, or that parent has a gift and that child chose to be birthed to that parent to really help them get through some of that. So if you would work really well as a coach to help parents or teachers, anybody who's an authoritarian to children, to advocate for what they need to do. And so you are like I said, you're one of the main ambassadors and you signed up for this. So what I tell people like yourself, when you're scared, you're nervous, you're not sure of your worth or your value, which is all ego, right?
Yeah.
That there's a lineup of people that also were birthed waiting for you to show up,
Hmm.
and they're suffering until you show up.
Yeah. And the way that you describe the ego, these past couple of years, I've been working on that because I understand the seduction of power. And then all of a sudden, when you're getting attention, that ego can get really seduced by that. And I've
Mhm.
been very intentional of doing the work of putting the intention and being accountable, of being aware when that ego comes, because
Mhm.
it's like I don't want the seduction to all of a sudden, overtake something, because the ego is very sly in certain things, and
Mhm.
it's to not be like, oh, that could never happen. No, you have to be aware of the seductions, the some of the many people had the best intentions, yet those powers can be very overwhelming and they can
Mhm.
overtake. So I've had those conversations. So you saying the ego part, I've felt it.
Well, and basically for your listeners right now, you're basically listening to a session. This is how I would do a
Yeah.
session with my clients. So this is a live session. And so basically, you're someone who, if you want to look at it backwards. So if somebody wants to take their vulnerability and their fear and turn it into anger, and in turn turn that anger into action that is proactive for whatever they're involved, quitting their job, advocating for their children, arguing with their husband about what's right or what's wrong for what they feel for their child. That's what you do. You turn that fear and that anger into proactive action, and you coach them into turning that into that. And if you say it in that general sense, 100 people will be able to go like, that's me. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to show my anger, and I'm submissive because I don't know how to turn, but I can turn that into action. I can turn that into something proactive. I didn't know that. I thought I just had to sit here and control all my anger and my feelings and keep it all to myself. I didn't know it could actually be coached into turning it to something positive, right? And that's what you do.
Yeah, because I see anger has such a bad rap, and it's like, no, you have to go into that and you have to question it, and it's giving you information. There's great power with that.
Mhm.
There's a stallion that you can ride on with it,
Mhm.
and I can go deep into shadow work, and I'm not intimidated of shadow work. So that's
Mhm.
where I can hold space for people to dive into that, and then they're like, I didn't know somebody else could witness this and not push it away. And it's like, no, no, no. You can go in there and see the value in there. I put in a small terms too of processing shit to be able to cultivate your garden. And there's
Yeah.
some times that are going to be really uncomfortable, and that's that shadow work. Yet once you can go in there, you'd be amazed of what can develop and what can grow and shine and everything else.
And it's
Yet,
too, yeah, and it's too easy in this new age self-help industry for the last 20, 30 years to suffocate our anger, because that's not the spiritual thing to do. Before that, it was religion. Well, God wouldn't like that, right? But anger, I am at my fiercest. I'm the most powerful when I'm angry. I do everything to avoid anger. I got Virgo, Libra, peace at all costs, got to do the right thing, be the good girl. But when I'm angry, like nothing, I got everything. I bear all, and that's when I say, screw you. You're not doing this to me anymore. F you. I mean, if anybody's on my Facebook, they seen me put up my anger rant today, because of that. And I hesitate while I'm doing it because what if this person sees it and, sees this other side of me? But this anger can force you. I mean, this is the flight or fight. This is why your adrenal glands push out an enormous amount of adrenaline when you're need to run the race, you're being chased by a saber-tooth tiger, it does that because you go, "Ah," right? And then it lets you have that power, right? That power to do what you need to do. If you need to lift a car off of your child, you're going to be screaming bloody murder because that's what has to come out in order for that to happen. I don't advocate somebody walking around just being angry at anybody and everybody, right? There's a fine line to that as well. And that's at Leo. You got that moon in Leo. It's feisty, it's fiery, it's being a bit submerged by that Scorpio fear of fear of being vulnerable, fear of being seen, fear of being out of control. What if somebody sees me out of control and sees me vulnerable? Then they can get in there and hurt me in my vulnerable times. But the neatest thing, which you would have experienced as a child, is that you had to, as a Scorpio, and this is a lesson for most Scorpios, is that you have to learn to trust yourself.
Yeah.
And how you learn to trust yourself? Universe, God, source, or you birthed yourself into a bunch of people that are not trustworthy. You could not rely on them. You could not depend on them. They weren't going to keep you safe. And so you had to find a way to do it yourself. And so hopefully you don't live your entire life full of fear and not trusting anybody. What happens usually around the age of, if it's with your mother, it will be between the age of 36 and 40. Between 36 and 40 is when you realize your whole mother-child dynamic. Start healing that, recognize it, don't like it, start healing that, which is what would have happened with you. And the whole family dynamic around that. Moon and Leo, all about family. How did that family support or not support me? Really, it supported that story, but didn't support me. And then once you get past that, then you get to the point that, you know what? I'm going to be vulnerable to you, because when you show your true colors, I trust myself that I will protect myself when I need to be protected.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the gift that you have. I'm going to ask you to go into your 18-year-old self. And I'm going to ask you to bring your awareness now to that 18-year-old self. And you have only 3 words you can tell that 18-year-old self. What would those 3 words be?
I know this is the right words because it's bringing tears to my eyes. You are important.
And you are. Thank you.
Not in an ego way, in that you are an important part of the whole big picture.
You have to shine and shine bright. Yes.
Thank you.
Where can the listeners find you?
Ask Holly Hall basically is my tag for everything. So it's askhollyhall.com. On Facebook, it's Ask Holly Hall for the group and Ask Holly Hall for the page. LinkedIn, Ask Holly Hall. Instagram, Ask Holly Hall. And also Holly at askhollyhall.com for the email. And I'd like to give your listeners a 20% off. So if they go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, they'll get an instant 20% off, and they can unsubscribe the very next day if they want to. I hardly send out emails, like once or twice a month, maybe. So, but yeah.
I appreciate that. Would you like to leave the listeners with anything?
Absolutely. Never be afraid to be that unique version of who you are, and never be afraid to find out who that is.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up in the world as brilliant, as unique, as gifted as you are. I appreciate the essence that you bring into the world. So thank you for blessing the listeners, blessing myself with your energy, with your frequency. Thank you for sharing your time. I appreciate you, Holly.
I see you. I hear you. Thank you.
Remember to be kind and gentle with yourself. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. I appreciate you and your time. If you found anything that was relevant, or perhaps there's somebody that you think can benefit from this podcast, please share it out. Help grow the community. Help grow Lift Oneself. You can find more information on our website at www.lift liftoneself.com. Until next time, be sure to be kind and soft with yourself. You matter.